Hello, New Mexico, and welcome to another episode of Around the Roundhouse, a podcast featuring the policies, politics, and personalities of the land of enchantment. My name is Daniel Chacón, and I'm the state government reporter for the New Mexican. We took our show on the road this week and traveled to Rio Rancho to speak with State Senator Jay Block, a Republican who is serving his first term in the legislature. Senator Block is a former two-term Sandoval County Commissioner and a retired lieutenant colonel. Senator, thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you, Daniel, and it's great to have you in my home with my wife and I here, and Titan the dog under the table.
Well, I love Titan. We might have to take him back to Santa Fe. Senator, you began your military service right out of high school. Was joining the Air Force always your plan?
Growing up, the Air Force was not my plan. I was very close to my grandfather. He was in the Navy on a destroyer in World War II, and he was a very patriotic guy. And so I knew I was going to end up in the military somehow, but I also did it, quite frankly, because I didn't have money for college, and it was a way to go to school. And when I got commissioned in the Air Force through ROTC at North Dakota State, I owed the Air Force 4 years. I didn't plan on making it a career, but I just really enjoyed what I was doing and served over 20 years as a nuclear weapons officer.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you, is what did you do in the Air Force and how did you end up in New Mexico?
Mainly, I was an ICBM guy, Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, Minuteman III weapon system. I was a missile launch officer, the guy sitting underground with the nuclear codes, ready to launch your missiles at our adversaries. Did that, volunteered for a combat tour in Afghanistan, which was probably the best and worst tour in my time in the military in 2005 and 2006 over there. And that has stuck with me for the rest of my entire life since, for 20 years now since I've been home. Served in the Pentagon, standing up a new nuclear directorate on the air staff. And then I went over for about 5 years in Europe, working with NATO, with our partners, doing nuclear-capable missions over there as a commander in the Netherlands. And then also, again, as a senior American officer and commander down on Ascension Island in the South Atlantic, which is a British island, which was a very tough tour. A lot of scuba diving, a lot of fishing, very tough tour.
Adventurous.
Yeah,
it sounds like.
Absolutely.
You said the tour in Afghanistan was both the best and worst. Can you elaborate?
It was a place where I volunteered to go. I felt like after 9/11, we were sending a lot of people over, especially in 2003 to Iraq. Well, 2001, October of 2001 to Afghanistan, and then obviously 2003 in Iraq. And I just felt like I needed to go and be part of it and serve over there. And I ended up organizing and commanding numerous humanitarian missions around the Kabul area, going to orphanages and refugee camps. And it was the worst place in my life because the amount of the devastation you saw over there was something I just didn't even imagine going, before I went over there and was around that for a while.
I mean, I can sense and see that you get emotional on that topic.
Well, it was also the best place I could have been because we got to do a lot of great work, going around and handing out clothes and medical supplies and food and water to the people there, that little kids. I think that was probably the biggest impact to my career.
Okay.
Yep.
So, Senator, how did you end up in one of the best places in the world, in New Mexico? How did you end up in New Mexico?
Well, I was over in Germany as a deputy group commander at Spangdahlem Air Base in Germany, working with our NATO partners in Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Italy. And basically left there. I had a couple options of going to Louisiana or New Mexico, and I've been here before for some nuclear classes, and I really enjoyed being here. So when I came here, I owed the Air Force 1 year, and I said, all right, I want to go to New Mexico. And I thought I would maybe go back to New Hampshire, where I'm from, but I just fell in love with New Mexico and got a job as a nuclear weapons consultant and stayed.
Right on. Well, let me ask, just on the issue of veterans and military service, and you being a veterans advocate, have you heard concerns from veterans in New Mexico about cuts to the VA under the Trump administration?
I haven't yet, but I mean, listen, I think a lot of veterans understand that, they're trying to root out fraud, waste, abuse, quite frankly, inefficiencies too. And the VA has been known for a lot of that. And I think, listen, I'm a 100% disabled vet, so I'm eligible to use the VA, and I have sometimes. We all want the VA to provide better care, and under the first Trump administration, he was able to get us VA choice, which was private care if we couldn't get into the VA, which was fantastic for so many vets. So I think you'll see a lot of veterans that are trusting this guy to make sure that the VA does better to support its veterans. And we'll wait and see. But so far, I haven't seen anything where, veterans aren't getting the care that they need.
Senator, switching over to public service, what led you to seek public service first as a county commissioner for Sandoval County?
Well, I think it goes back to, my grandfather again, reminding me of Ronald Reagan growing up. And he was a very patriotic guy. And then for some reason, I was one of those kind of geeky kids that watched the news when I'm, 9, 10 years old. And I loved politics. And as a teenager growing up in Manchester, New Hampshire, first in the nation primary, I worked for a guy named Jack Kemp, who was running for president in 1988 and knocking on doors for the New Hampshire primary to help get him elected. He obviously didn't win. And then I interned for my U.S. Senator in college. And as an Air Force officer, we have to be very, very careful about any political stuff, which is a good thing. And when I retired, I knew I wanted to run for office somewhere. And I talked to a lot of people here that I was interested in running, and they said, why don't you start cutting your teeth at the county commission level and see how you like it. And I'm the first Republican to win this particular district at the time, District 2, and served 8 years and learned a hell of a lot about local government and just absolutely loved it. In fact, I really thank the 8 years I had on the county commission before going up to the Senate, because it really gave me a lot of preparation to fight some battles up there and learn the issues.
How is being a state senator different or similar to being a county commissioner?
It's not similar at all, Daniel.
It's not.
It's totally different. On the county commission, there's 5 of us. And as a Republican, when I won the seat, we were the majority. So we turned Sandoval County red. And you had a lot more power and influence. You could do things differently. Then as a state senator, being one of 42 and only 16 Republicans and 26 Democrats, as the minority party, you got to work differently. And I think I was able to do that up in Santa Fe this year by building relationships, not just within my caucus, but across the aisle with the Senate Democrats. And I think we did a pretty good job this year.
Well, it's been about a month since the end of that 60-day session that you just referenced. As a freshman lawmaker, what was your overall impression of the goings-on in Santa Fe? And more importantly, do you believe good laws were passed?
Yes and no. Of course, being in the minority party, we think there are some bad laws that were passed, but I believe that we had some bad laws that were not passed, and we had some good laws that were passed and good laws that were not passed. So you had kind of like a little Punnett square there of laws. But the one thing I learned is how powerful the committee chairs are, because they're the ones that decide what's going to be heard and when it's going to be heard. And being the minority party, what I've learned is we have to, when we do a bill, the first thing I'm thinking of is, okay, I got this bill, but who on the other side of the aisle can I partner with? Who's willing to partner with me to get this bill done? And then you got to work on the committee chairs to get your bill heard. So you got to do a lot of greasing the skids, so to speak, before you can get your bill to the floor.
Senator, one of the bills that you championed was a proposal to create an office in state government that would be basically New Mexico's version of DOGE, though you arguably had a catchier name, Government Accountability to Taxpayer Office, or GATO, and every time I say that, I want to say meow.
Yep, it's cat in Spanish, and I got 3 cats, so there you go.
Well, Senator, catch us up on what happened to that bill.
Well, so that bill was heard in Rules Committee. I think it was the day before the session ended, and I had an incredible two gentlemen sitting next to me pushing that bill with me. Paul Gessing was one from the Rio Grande Foundation. Paul's up there a lot during the session. And another one was this PhD physicist who was hired by Dr. Oppenheimer. And he was just a brilliant, brilliant man. And we talked about setting up this office using emerging technology tools and AI, of being able to go across the entire spectrum of government to go start looking at money, tracing the money. And in this office, we would have people like AI experts, procurement experts, contract experts, software engineers, and it would be a continuous look across the entire state government of identifying fraud, waste, abuse, and inefficiencies. It wasn't about jobs. That was not part of it at all. That's not what I was focused on. We were just focused on ensuring that the taxpayer dollars were being spent appropriately, because even during the session, if you remember, one of your competitor papers here in Albuquerque, the biggest paper, they had a story about the state government overpaying $250 million, if you remember, of COVID payments. And they're not getting that money back. And there is massive fraud in Medicaid. We know that. And there's been so much corruption. I mean, you've been in New Mexico all your life. You know that. So that was the main focus of it. And it died, but we're going to partner. I've talked to the state auditor Maestas, and he would like to have the office. He favors the concept of the office, and he would like to have it in the auditor's office, but call it a state inspector general office. And I think that's a fair point, and I could compromise working with him.
Great. We'll see where that heads in the future. Senator, the public obviously gets to see legislators debate bills in committee rooms and on the floor. What happens behind the scenes that the public doesn't get to see?
So before it gets to the floor, you got to remember, did the bill start in the Senate, and then it goes through two committees in the Senate. So there's a lot of work that happens before it even gets to the floor. If it's a House bill, it goes to the House committees on the House floor, gets voted over, gets read on the floor, then it gets assigned to a committee or two, and then passed. Then it comes to the Senate floor for the governor's signature if it passes. So we look at a lot of these bills, and the bill number tells you a lot about the priority of the bill, like Senate Bill 1, 2, and 3, which I co-sponsored, and we can get into that. Some of the most comprehensive mental health bills this state has ever seen.
Yes, sir.
And so, the Democrats have their caucus. We have our caucus. They go and they do their caucus meetings. We have our caucus meetings, and we strategize. I mean, there's no secret there. The lobbyists play a big part as well. A lot of organizations play a huge part in these bills, if they're going to pass or not. Like, for instance, Better Together New Mexico Business Coalition, the Chamber of Commerce, all those organizations really focused hard against HB 11, the Paid Family Medical Leave bill. And that died in Senate Finance with 3 Democrats voting against it. So there's, you see a lot of sausage being made in the committees, and then the strategy is really on the House floor. But in my opinion, the place to kill bills is in the committee, because the committees are usually 6-4 on the Senate side, or unless it's finance, it's 8-3.
With Democrats, obviously, in the majority.
Democrats are in the majority in every committee because they're the majority party. But that's where we have a really good shot of killing bills, is in the committee, in my opinion.
Senator, the governor has indicated that she plans to call a special session focused on public safety. What do you think? Is that a good idea?
Well, it'd be a good idea if the Democrats would actually get serious about crime, because this omnibus bill that we passed in the Senate, while we felt like it didn't go far enough, we offered, I think, if you remember, 6, 7, or 8 amendments to make the bill stronger, and every single one of those amendments was shot down. And this is just my opinion. This is what I see just as an outsider, is I think the governor and the state Democrat Party took out a lot of moderate conservative Democrats and put in these very progressive Democrats. And now the chasm between the two parties, in my opinion, has really grown even more, where we could have worked with people like, the John Arthur Smith types, the Clemente Sanchez types, but now we have a guy named George Munoz, who I think we can work with, who's I think has done a pretty decent job as Senate Finance Chair. So I think we need to kind of come into the middle on some of these issues a lot, especially on crime, to really get things done, because I don't see anything coming out of a special session on crime.
Well, speaking of crime, we're in one of the safest cities in New Mexico right now.
The safest.
The safest.
And the safest county.
And not too far from here is one of the most violent with the city of Albuquerque. What is Rio Rancho doing right?
Well, I think it's numerous things. I think the citizens here are involved in public safety. I think the police and the sheriff's office have the elected officials behind that have their back, which is very important. I think we let the police do their job and enforce the law. We have police officers that want to come up here and serve. Instead, you look at Albuquerque, I think they're like, 400 officers short down there. And you have a mayor who is just awful when it comes to letting the police do their job with, drug use just out in the public view. I just did a film. I don't know if you saw on my Facebook page, PBS, a filmmaker out in the Clovis Portales area. We went down to one of the main homeless encampments under the bridge on the Big I. Just awful down there. And the police go down there, but the police just don't even really enforce the drug laws down there. People are doing heroin, meth right there in public, and they're passed out. In fact, the day we went down there, the day before, there was a lady who was dead on the corner.
Oh, wow.
And some awful things were happening to her while she was dead, by the way, on the corner. And it's just unbelievable what's going on down there. And I think the mayor of Albuquerque has tied the hands of the police force, because the police want to do good down there.
I think the first time that I heard and saw what the fentanyl fold was here in Albuquerque. Senator, I want to switch gears a little bit. The governor's race is well underway here in New Mexico with two high-profile Democrats, Deb Haaland and Sam Bregman, already out of the gate this week. The mayor of Rio Rancho, Greg Hall, became the first Republican to enter the race. As someone who sought the Republican nomination for governor in 2022, what advice, if any, would you give them?
Raise money. It is a marathon, not a sprint. Be on the phone, talking to donors, and hit specific groups out there. Stay on message, and don't run too far to the right. Don't run too far to the left. When you get to the general election, be careful what you say during the primary, because it will come back and haunt you in the general election if you're the nominee for a Republican or a Democrat. But quite frankly, be honest about what you stand for, and be genuine. And if you're not a genuine candidate, people are going to see right through that, in my opinion. And that's why whether you love him or hate him, people see Trump as a genuine guy. They don't see him as fake, as they've seen so many other politicians. This is a guy who, for some reason, can relate to the working class in this country, and has pulled the working class from the Democrat Party over to the Republican Party. And that's a good thing. And I think for the Republican candidates or the nominee for governor, you got to focus on New Mexico issues of bringing those conservative Democrats over. Now, it's going to be an interesting election with the open primaries.
Yes.
We'll see how that works out. But I think we're going to have some solid candidates on the Republican side for governor, and I wish them well. Now, I will be supporting the Republican nominee.
Before we switch over to the Republican nominee, because obviously Mayor Rio Rancho, I want to get your thoughts on him. But what's your take on the Haaland-Bregman matchup? Are the odds against Bregman?
I think that Bregman actually has the upper hand. Listen, Bregman is he's had, if you look at his past record and some of the stuff he said, he's a far left guy, but he's not as far left as Deb Haaland. All you have to do is go on YouTube and type in there Deb Haaland committee hearings, and it's a complete disaster. This woman could not answer basic questions, had no clue what she was doing as Interior Secretary. Bregman's a pretty smart guy. His son plays for my favorite team, the Boston Red Sox, so that's kind of cool.
$120 million contract is kind of cool, too.
That's going to be funding the campaign, I would imagine, or possibly. But I think Bregman's going to have the upper hand in this race. I think he relates to northern New Mexicans better. I know during her time as Interior Secretary, Deb Haaland really upset some of the tribes and pueblos in regards to land grabs that didn't go well. So I think Bregman's got a better. I'll say 53-47 chance right now to win, even though Deb Haaland has raised $2.9 million, but I heard she already blew through half of that already.
Almost half.
Yeah, and it's like, what are you doing? That's why I said this is a marathon, not a sprint. So you got to be very frugal, and you got to be strategic in your message.
I imagine, going back to the mayor of Rio Rancho, I imagine that Greg Hall is a fairly recognizable name here in Rio Rancho as the city's longest serving mayor. Does he have what it takes for Republicans to win back the governor's office?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I'm not endorsing any Republican candidate, but I'll talk about him because he's the only one in the race so far. But 10 years as a mayor up here, and you look at Rio Rancho as the fastest growing city in the state. I think we're number 2 now. We may have just passed Las Cruces. It's the safest city to live in. It's been rated one of the best cities to live in the Southwest in the U.S. We have great schools up here. It's a little windy today, as you can see out there, but that's what we don't like. But we have the largest manufacturer up here with Intel. We have businesses leaving from down the hill in Albuquerque and Bernalillo coming up here to Rio Rancho and Sandoval County. The schools are great. People come up here because of the schools. So, I mean, you look at the model that we've built in Rio Rancho and Sandoval County, and I think that's a great campaign message to take to Santa Fe, which is what I tried to do 4 years ago. And
that's exactly what Mr. Hull did, is that he tried to emulate or say that, what is happening in Rio Rancho is something that he can take to the statewide level. Speaking of the statewide level, Senator, what about you? Any thoughts on running for governor again?
No. Let me look at my wife. What do you think? And she's shaking her head. No. I am very, very happy in the state Senate. I think right now, for me, the best I can do for New Mexico and my district here in beautiful District 12 of Northwest Albuquerque and Southern Rio Rancho is to stay in the Senate. A lot of politicians will try to jump from one office to another quickly. And in the military, as officers, we call those people careerists. Listen, learn your job, be good at your job, and everything else will fall into place. Right. And that's how you have to look at it.
Fantastic. Well, Senator, it's been great speaking with you. Thank you for welcoming us into your home. Am I missing to ask you anything you'd like to add, other than how great of a reporter Daniel Chacón is?
Yeah. Daniel's a great reporter, and he's got a wonderful wardrobe he's wearing.
All the time.
Yeah. No, it's very, very nice to have you in our home, and thank you for coming by here. And you and I have talked many, many times, and we'll talk again many, many times. So you've always been a great reporter and very, very fair, and I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
My thanks again to Senator Block for joining us this week, and thank you for listening to Around the Roundhouse. Join us every week as we talk to newsmakers in the political realm by subscribing to our podcast through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest developments, follow our coverage online at SantaFeNewMexican.com, where you can also subscribe to our political newsletter, The Roundhouse Report. Until next time, I'm Daniel Chacón, and this has been Around the Roundhouse.